We're going to start with Carl-Henric. And first of all, I wanted to say thanks for being here. His fellow CEO, well, you're not a CEO anymore, but his fellow Titans were quite surprised that he made it today. They thought he had a pretty good excuse to not be here and perhaps a good reason to duck the conversation, but he's a brave guy. So I can't resist starting by asking you, what's it like being in the center of this storm around the Gulf of Mexico?
Well, it's interesting. I was, when I came to Ericsson, we were in the middle of the crisis where we ended up shrinking the company from 110,000 to 45,000 people. This was with the bubble burst. And telecom is a continuous world of success and crises. And I felt going into this industry should be
You thought it would be calm?
Smoother ride. It's obviously a big disaster that we are witnessing. And it will be in many ways a game changer in the way that 3 Mile Island was. And we will learn to do things, learn a lot from this and learn to do things differently. But right now it's a tremendous fight to kill that well. And we're actually in a positive fight on the surface. We're actually taking off more oil than we're bringing to the surface. So we are in a bit of a good process. It's actually from a crisis perspective. I've been down there and we have this big center with 1,000 people. The best people of BP, the best scientists of the world, the best specialists from every single competitor in the world. Coast Guards, representatives from states, everybody working to just do this in a tremendous effort. And it will be successful, but it's a challenge.
Your reference to 3 Mile Island is quite chilling. I mean, does that mean you think that we're never going to drill in deep seas? Are people going to say this is just too dangerous?
Well, that would be the conclusion if 3 Mile Island would have led to the end of nuclear power. It didn't. We just learned how to do it in an even better way. There are 1,000 wells in the Gulf of Mexico that are more than 1,000 meters deep. So it's a rather standardized process. There hasn't been a blowout for 20 years. But this have happened, and we have to learn from it. But the interesting thing also when you look ahead at things, the world has always consumed more energy, basically in the pace that we see GDP grow. And we may now be able to sort of crack that trend by being more energy efficient in the Western world. But the world's energy today, half is in the Western world, half is in the emerging markets. Emerging markets with the growth rate it has is projected to have twice the energy need in only 20 years. That means that the world needs to produce 2 times the total energy consumption of the United States in addition to what we do today. So we will need everything. We will need oil, we will need coal, we will need wind, we will need biofuel, we will need everything to make that happen.
So does that mean, I'll ask you maybe a question that you'll like to hear, does that mean you think some of your critics are hypocritical? You know, people who say oil is destroying the environment, this BP disaster is the latest example. Is the reality that there's just no alternative?
Well, I think the reality is that this world needs energy. There's no way around it. And almost every energy form comes with some risk, and we've learned to live with that. Of course, we all dream about that there will be a day eventually when wind and solar and such energy forms can fuel it all, but we're not there yet. Technology isn't there yet.
Don, what should Carl-Henric be doing to deal with his PR disaster? What's the digitally advanced solution?
Fix the oil spill.
I think he's trying. He's working on it.
And I'm not deeply knowledgeable, but I know there have been a number of collaborations outside of BP to try and be helpful. Yeah. Why not hold a challenge to the world and find that uniquely qualified mind out there to say, how do we solve this problem?
Well, it's certainly, it is a good idea, and I think that's largely what happens. There are websites, there are everything welcoming every idea that is there. You know, on the ocean floor, 5,000 feet down, there is this blow-up preventer that you may read about, that is the one that sort of kills the well if it starts to flow. That thing is 20 meters high and weighs 500 tons. It is no small things that you actually have to close it, because you have to cut through casing pipes and drilling pipes and everything. And everything down there is done with submarines, where the young generation natives, your immigrant fellows, that are born with joysticks of sitting driving these small remote vehicles, the submarines, to actually with small wrenches do things. And pretty impressive work.
Do you guys have any tips? What would you do?
It's a hell of a challenge. I think the one interesting thing is the degree to which people are sort of objectifying BP and the oil industry. And the question is, how do you maybe through some sort of web enablement get them as part of the helping solve the problem as opposed to stand on the outside and throw rocks? And that's the bit that I would be worrying about in the longer term health of the company, is the sense that you're being somewhat victimized and pushed in the corner, and actually you need to get these guys to be part of the solution.
You know, I'll comment on that because let's face it, this is an age of transparency, and people are going to find out what's going on, and they're going to find out what kind of company you are. I think that's the big asset that BP has. It's actually a good company, and it's been a leader in thinking about green energy, and its integrity is very strong in its values. But companies are going to be naked, and if you're going to be naked, well, fitness is no longer optional. You know, you better be buff. And
that's the next part of it. Well, we have a swimsuit section of the panel. We didn't.
You know what,
maybe Khrustia can help us with that.
It's easy when a company is down in a problem like this. You'll get most of the people actually then sticking their foot out and kicking them. I actually believe that BP has done a good job so far. They've been at it immediately. They didn't make false statements. They didn't go behind the scenes, whatever. You guys have been out there. You've got a center with 1,000 people. You're inviting everybody's opinion. So
what about that tiny spill comment?
Well, you know what? The spill is the spill. As long as you're doing everything you can to actually get the thing done, and behaving like you are in a very open, transparent, responsible way. I think these are the only two things you can do.
Thank you. We need a few of you.
There you go.
Okay, Robert, well, I guess it's your turn to be in the hot seat.
Yeah.
So you run Gucci. Now would seem to be a tough time, not just with the recession, but even in the post-recession environment, to be trying to sell luxury goods. We heard Archbishop Tutu talking about a new age of capitalism. He took the obligatory kick at Goldman Sachs. We had David Cameron, the new Prime Minister, yesterday talking about how he doesn't want the head of any civil service to make more than 20 times what the person at the bottom makes. Is this a time that people are going to want to buy hugely expensive, of course incredibly beautiful, status markers that you sell them?
I'm glad you said, you used the word beautiful as well, because we are actually, and I say this quite often, it might sound a bit strange, but we are not in the business of selling shoes or handbags at all. If you'd like to buy a pair of shoes, or if you would like to buy a handbag, I know a huge amount of addresses where you can buy them a lot cheaper than in any of our stores. And we, by the way, have 8 brands. It's a group with Yves Saint Laurent, Bottega Veneta, Boucheron. So it's a multitude of brands. And it's not only about beauty, although it has often been said that the thing of beauty is a joy forever. But it's also about fulfilling desires. And not selling the handbag or the shoe, we're actually in the business of selling dreams. Now, you don't get a spill from that one, so that'll be a next business idea for you.
You have your fake brands.
Yeah, we have the fake brands. And when we sell dreams instead of products, this is the essence of what we do, and hence it is a market that will always be there. There are several reasons why people would like to belong to the world of Gucci or the world of Bottega Veneta or Yves Saint Laurent, because it's a world that says something about your own personality. So first and foremost, of course, people have always had, when they achieve a certain amount of wealth, a need to pamper themselves, but also a need, and luckily this is happening all over the emerging markets as people get into the middle classes, a need to wear something on your body somewhere, be it shoes or a jacket or a handbag or sunglasses or the perfume, that says to somebody else, hey, look, I have arrived somewhere. I am somebody. And it says something about their personality.
But Robert, don't you worry that maybe we're entering an age when people should be more cautious about that? We saw Don's pictures of the Greek protesters and the Thai protesters.
Yeah.
Maybe to wear your luxury brands
Absolutely.
Sends the wrong message.
Yeah, and that's why people have actually changed in behavior. They're buying different type of products under our brand than they did 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So we see a huge difference in the amount of logo for example, that is on the bags.
Less logo?
A lot less logo. And one of our brands, Bottega Veneta, is actually positioned right in the core of that, what I call the new normal behavior of consumers. It has a payoff that says, when your own initials are enough. So on the outside of the bag, it's a recognizable Bottega Veneta bag for people who know about it, but it doesn't have a logo, nor does it have the brand name. It has your initials on the inside of the bag. So less overt.
So a status symbol, but that only other rich people recognize, that poor people can't recognize?
You know what? And you can cuddle, yes. And you can cuddle actually at home with some of those bags that are so soft, or with your beautiful cashmere blanket that you've just bought, which is also luxury, if I may say.
And is there a difference? You spoke about emerging markets or frontier markets as people are talking about them. Is there a difference in behavior there?
Yeah, and that's also one of the things that I think we've surprised the markets with in the last 2 to 3 years, because we didn't actually see so much of a slowdown. Last year was our second most profitable year ever, with cash flow up 60% and the highest ever. And this is due to the portfolio. And we've got a portfolio in brands, we've got them in categories, but also in geographies. And take China, for example. In 2004, we had 4 stores in China for the Gucci brand. And we just opened yesterday store number 34. So we have more selling square footage in mainland China than we built up in 5 years' time than we built up over 40 years in Japan. So Greater China, which is mainland, Hong Kong, and Macau, is 17% of turnover, and it is growing at 39% at the same margins as our other businesses in Europe or the United States.
So Don talked to us about the information revolution. You're part also of the globalization revolution happening at the same time.
Globalization, but also information, because I vividly remember when I started, when they said, well, the Iceman cometh, and now everything is going to be mass. We've just
Robert
launched...
came from Unilever.
Yeah, we've just launched
footnote.
Last year the ultimate product that people could accuse us of being mass. Namely, a product that is the ultimate entry price, and it is free. We have a product that is absolutely free. It is called the app for the iPhone. It's a Gucci app. It had been downloaded in 8 weeks, I think 550,000 times, and it is free. But it serves the same purpose as all of our other products, because you can show your friends that on your iPhone, you probably put it on your first page, that you have the Gucci app. And it says something about you. So now the circle is complete again. Either I buy a 10,000 because we have them for 20,000 euros handbag, or the opposite of the spectrum, I download the Gucci app on my iPhone. It's all about emotions, and it's about behavior and fulfilling desires.
And your hope, of course, is that all those people download. How many people have downloaded the Gucci app?
550,000.
500, and you hope how many of them are going to be upsold into your $10,000 handbags?
A lot will, and a lot will buy our goods online as well, because totally convinced that our online stores will become our biggest, fastest growing, and most profitable stores in the world.
Yeah. Don, you're dying to say something. Please, jump in.
I'm always dying to say. Now, in the spirit of Serge's interrupt, I think there are a lot of good lessons here, but one of them is this idea that we shouldn't be selling products. We should be creating experiences. And that's not just motherhood. It's an actual economic fact. And I'll just give you a quick example. You buy coffee on a commodity market. You sell it, you can get about 1/20th of a cent for a cup of coffee. You put it into a good, and you can get 7 cents for the same coffee. You sell it in a store. You get someone to make it, you can get 85 cents. It's called a service. You throw some foamy stuff on the top and a cool logo and so on, you can get $4 for the same coffee. And then you put some great Wi-Fi and the ability to get certain iTunes and so on in the store, and it becomes a transformative thing. People talk about Starbucks as the third place. There's work, there's home, and there's Starbucks. And this is now becoming broadly applicable to many industries. And of course, again, the web is the mode of production and distribution that enables us to think about not just selling to people, but to engaging them and even to co-innovate value with them. You've got companies like Threadless, where their products are designed by their customers now.
Well, we're going to hear from Howard Schultz later today. Ian also faces a sort of fundamental challenge to what he's doing, which is that I suppose in some ways people could have described your business as a play on all the bad things that were happening in the world economy prior to the financial crisis. Right, you sold more stuff as people bought homes around the world that they couldn't afford, it turned out. So you were sort of surfing the real estate boom, not only in Europe, but also, say, in China.
Yeah.
How have you adapted to that? And are you worried that the new normal is not going to involve us spending so much to improve our homes?
Well, I would say firstly that people's connection emotionally to their homes is still the single most important thing. You talk to anyone.
You're a dream seller too?
Yeah, we absolutely. You know, 80%, literally, we did a survey around the world, 80% of people think that the home is the most important thing. And what they're describing then is not bricks and mortar, it's about their connection with their family and their homes. And so what I think we have seen is a shift away from the home as a sort of key asset or your biggest part of your pension plan. And we've definitely seen that effectively reverse. And so some of the froth, the speculation that led to an overheating housing market, you know, won't come back. And we are seeing fundamentally, I think, lower levels of absolute spending on housing. Interesting though, housing markets around Europe fell maybe 30, 40% in some cases. Our markets fell maybe 3 to 5% because what happened was people basically said, well, I'm in my home, I'm still going to spend on my home, I care about it.
So instead of buying a new house, people
they
fix
improved,
up their old one?
And also, there was a sort of interesting shift that happened, which said, if you're not treating it as a sort of series of transactions or buy-to-let, we found, for example, the sort of, we had this explosion, particularly in the UK, of designer wallpaper with very, very sort of over-the-top patterns, because people were no longer just painting it magnolia and hoping to flog it next week to someone else. They were saying, actually, this is more about me. So I think, and to echo Don's point, I mean, I think what we've got to do as retailers is find the next model, which is how do you tap into that desire for the home and service and actually creating something beyond fundamental bits and pieces. And when we're at the end of a model now, which is 40 years old, you know, you used to, in the 70s, look at TV, see an ad, get in your bit of tin, go to a big box, buy it, and come back home. This generation is not going to do that. This generation is looking for a whole set of different things. And we're in a point where, fortunately, we're not as exposed maybe as the music business. But we know, and it's very hard to digitize a power tool, thank God, but where we are is on a journey towards a very different sort of type of spending, but the fundamental economic dynamic is still the emotion of the consumer about their home, and I think that's the core.
And what do you mean by that journey to a different type of spending? What does that actually mean?
Well, I think you're going to see things like more demand for quick, effectively makeover type, flexible rooms, so you've actually got the ability to change your house every 3 years as your life stages, your kids grow up, you want to use rooms differently. Average homes are getting much smaller around the world. You have to use that space much more intensively. And I think fundamentally you're also seeing people much less skilled. I mean, the traditional US or Canadian big project, I'll build the whole thing, is much less evident now. You know, this generation is now digital and completely useless at doing DIY. So we're going to have to...
Yes, my husband is an example
right,
of that.
Right, rest my case. But I mean, I think we're going to have to then step into the breach and say, right, some stuff we're going to make it really easy for you, and some stuff we're probably going to have to make it more of a service proposition. And increasingly...
So you'll start to sell services? I can buy the stuff and also you'll sell me someone
yeah, I mean,
who
we
puts up the shelves?
we already put in about 15% of the kitchens we sell, we install ourselves, and I think those sorts of opportunities, but you know, why not be the person that actually helps you replan your house every 3 or 4 years, gives you color advice, makes it simple for you. Because people are very dissatisfied with what they can do with their homes. They find it difficult, confusing, it's not straightforward. So the person that can simplify that, and particularly using social media, I'm absolutely convinced this is going to be about people comparing notes, saying, look, here's my project online. And you know, people love to share this stuff. We do it with Screwfix, our trade business, where people come on saying, I've got this widget, 17.3 alert. And there's this tidal wave of forum chat that comes at them and says, oh, well, you need to do this, or you need to go and do that, which is not rational economics, because the consumer's giving something for free, but it makes perfect human sense, because that's the way we're wired.
And do you see that working at a more retail level as well? Sort of Don's idea that you let people design the products that you then go on to sell them?
I think the whole co-creation opportunities are enormous. And actually one of the big things we want to do, we've got a big complex range, 40,000 SKUs in a big box. you know, what products are people not seeing? How do we get them to get involved in the shaping the products? You know, if we're previewing stuff, how do we get them to help us sort of move it forward? I think there's just, for a very traditional, frankly, deeply boring retail business, we've got a lot of opportunity ahead of us.
We'll take questions in a few minutes, so please get your questions ready, and it would be good if you could come to the mics. But you know, it's easy to talk about reinventing a business. How much traction are you getting actually saying, say, to your designers, I don't want you to design anymore, I'm going to let our consumers do the designing for you? How hard is that?
I don't think it's that hard. I think it's not so much the actual innovation around the product. The hard bit is trying to reimagine the business model to go back.
You mean actually make money out of it, like not like the news business, for
Exactly.
instance?
I mean, I think you're seeing huge, you know, there's huge inertia around existing business model because everyone knows how they make money, and the people are very comfortable with that. They find it really tough to reinvent the next way of making money. So they sort of tend to say, well, we've made money this way, so we'll paint it a different color and we'll carry on making money that way. That sense of there is actually a different paradigm in there, I think, is a really tough bit to crack.
And Robert?
I would be very careful to expect consumers to design the products, because that is something that I think will never happen. Because look at what a designer does for a living, and we have about 150 designers in Gucci Group. What they do for a living is that they invent and create products that you and I were not yet aware of that we had a need for. Yeah? And there are a few people in the world, talented individuals, that have this capability of inventing and creating products that the moment we see it, we say, that's exactly what I wanted.
Okay,
and that takes a designer, it takes a human being, it takes a talent to be able to do that. You can't ask consumers to do that.
I'm hoping that Carl-Henric and Don are going to disagree with you. Is that, it looked like it.
Well, I think it's true if what you're selling is products, but you told us earlier that's not what you're selling. And if you build iPhone apps and engage your customers in the whole service and experience side of it, there are all kinds of opportunities to create a richer experience and deeper relationships beyond just doing transactions around products. I think, of course, Gucci has fabulous designers that it's going to be hard to replicate that.
Yeah. We do sell products, but we sell the dream first. So if you're a woman and you have to enter, for example, this room, you have to go on stage. Well, you're wearing somebody else's design today, but never mind.
He checked
From Furstenberg, which is also very good. So here we go. But if you're a woman, you enter a room.
But Robert is wearing Gucci himself, the belt and the shoes.
It makes me feel more self-confident. Because if you're a woman and you enter a room, everybody's looking at you. What is the biggest worry that you have as a woman? Maybe men sometimes have the same. My God, what will they think? How do I look? Now, if you're wearing Gucci heels and you're wearing a tight-fitting Gucci dress, you feel more self-confident when you enter that room. It helps you, if you see what I mean. So we sell the dream first, and we sell the products after. So we're in the products business. We're a consumer goods business.
Carl-Henric, you had a...
I'm just sitting reflecting a bit over. I don't disagree at all with that. It's all the way it's well described. But I think I'd just like to come back to where you started today, because we are, and the theme of this very hour also is very much about leading from the front. And I think we have to be aware that we are going through a financial crisis, and we can all think about how this financial crisis will affect us. But in parallel to that is this tremendous technology shift, which is what you described about, the whole turn to internet, which opens up the digital management rights, as you were saying, the IPR world, all of that. And in parallel to that, we have this huge shift from mature markets to emerging markets. And I think I sometimes I feel a bit nervous that we, as in our mature markets, we're sort of think we're going to battle through this financial crisis, and then when we're over that cold river, we get up on land again and march on. But that land is going to be fundamentally different.
And what are the big differences going to be? Are they going to be this digital revolution Don spoke about? Are they going to be globalization? What's the next hurricane?
I think the digital revolution is going to be just massive. In my work as Ericsson, I've been all over the place, and I think it's interesting there wasn't a politician in the 50s and 60s that didn't think about didn't think about, if I don't have an airport, people won't fly to my city, people won't fly to my country. But do they understand enough of what the digital world means about rolling out broadband, make it and build an intelligent society? Our society is new highways. And this is something, when I travel the world, I find that there isn't a single politician in the emerging markets that aren't hungry to learn about how to build an intelligent society. Whereas our politicians, where we live in a part of the world where it isn't that dynamic anymore, they don't think so much about that. We're sort of more into how we can distribute the wealth we have rather than how we build a productive society. And I think that's a very important part. And so there is a risk that these play in the hands of the emerging markets, both of them.
Relative to the developed markets, you think that?
I think there is the emerging markets.
Dead?
The emerging markets are definitely growing there. There is a good demand there, but it is also a new form of competition growing up there. But there is also an ambition to learn about faster building an intelligent and modern society.
I have to say, I mean, one of the things I was outside one of Robert's stores in Shenzhen on Friday. What was fascinating was watching this Chinese consumer with an iPhone, with an app, and the degree of penetration of the digital sort of ethos, even if maybe the level of penetration isn't there, but for that middle-class Chinese customer, they are as wide, if not more wide, than anyone I've seen. And so you combine the natural dynamism and the shift towards the east, plus the digital dimension, and I think you've got a serious set of challenges for Western economies to adapt and cope.
I'd like to add one more thing. So I think China and technology are the big game changers that luckily we are experiencing. It's the biggest opportunity I've ever experienced. I'm working for 32 years, and this is the big thing. And the third one, I think, is that fundamentally we need to rethink the way we lead our businesses in order to make sure that we motivate and get the best out of people. Because society has changed. And I, not for nothing that I did leave one company in order to join another one. That the old model of telling people what to do and controlling is completely over.
And how was that related to your choice? You felt your old company was too hierarchical?
Well, let me not talk about my old company, let me talk about the new one.
Very deft.
Where at the beginning, when I started, I saw that in the business side and the creative side, 150 leaders on the business, 150 leaders on the creative side, had something very important in common. They really disliked it, and still do, if you tell them what to do. They hate it. They don't like it at all. So how to organize with 8 brands and a global concept, it's a completely global business. It is as relevant in Indonesia, in China, in Latin America as it is in Belgium or in Holland, for that matter. How to organize that in a way that it still makes more profit than before, that it hits right there, it beats the competition, and that creativity is allowed to flourish. And we coined that in a concept, and it's called freedom within the framework. We have a handwritten 2-page, not a book, not a Bible, not a thing. Handwritten, it stayed handwritten.
Handwritten by you?
By me. It stayed handwritten for 4 years on 2 pages. We said, guys, these are the rules of the game. Within that, within budgets and 3-year plans, trusting a co-leadership of a CEO and a creative director who are actually married to each other with all the ups and downs. And then we said, let them go. Let them go. No control. No meetings, no reports, no minutes of meetings. Go for it, guys. Conquer the world.
Okay, I think we'll take some questions now. Please.
My name is Annette Eres. I'm a professor at INSEAD. And the question I wanted to ask is about trust. What you see that on an individual level, we've seen an enormous amount increase of trust and transparency as people start to interact on all the platforms they have and share their data. On the other hand, if I look at the 16 institutions you described, what you see maybe because they see what's happening, trust has gone down enormously. They've become defensive. They start to be less transparent because they're maybe very scared of what's coming to them. And yet there are the same individuals who are more trustworthy on an individual basis, who get more suspicious and defensive on an institutional basis. And so my question, I think Robert just gave a great example of how it can be handled, is how do you think maybe then, how can you break, they know what is going to happen, what they have to do, however, they don't have the trust to jump. And for me, that's the major barrier. How can you get beyond that one?
They don't have the trust in the company?
Well, they don't have the trust to change their business models and to do the way the things are doing because they're so scared of what they're about to lose. And so and that is hampering a lot of the things which should be possible.
Well, no, but I would say that issue, I think, is very, very important and a reason why you see shift in development in the world. I think that is the reason why, for example, we can expect China to be the ones that takes the lead on green cars, because they simply need that. We all need it, but in the Western world, we're all sitting defending and lobbying for defending the existing workplaces and all of that. So it's a matter of combination of I think, vision and self-confidence and political leadership to dare to go where the future lies.
Why political leadership? Do you think governments need to be pushing this?
Yeah, because I think sometimes there are regulations or there are ways of working or setups and so on. You need ambitions to change if you're going to challenge your existing industry to come to a new and better place.
I think there is a fundamental question, which is that in most of the, if you like, going back, most of the innovation tends to come from outside established players, precisely because established players have their culture so hardwired in, it's really difficult to imagine a different alternative reality. And you almost need some unreasonable heretic out on the side to be the agent for change. I think the one thing you can do is, certainly from a business point of view, is create a culture where it is okay to do some failing. And it's amazing how failure adverse our business cultures have become, because basically people want experimentation and innovation, but somehow they want it without any failure attached to it, which is simply impossible. So if you can create a culture which says, okay, how many good failures have you had this year? And actually, maybe you have a failure award instead of an innovation award.
Have you done that? Do you
we're
have the
actually
Kingfisher
planning
Loser
to do
Award?
That. We weren't going to call it that, actually.
It's my branding suggestion
right,
for you.
okay. I think we'll creative failure award. And I think you've got to have some.
How much money would you be allowed to lose in this award?
Well, I think you can...
Or encouraged to.
Encourage lose. I'm not sure we're going to put a monetary value on it just to get people competing for the biggest hole they can create. But I think what we are saying is, have you tried to do something creative that was going to lead to a business idea and then it failed? And if you look at things like drug development, aircraft design and stuff like that, even with all the advances being made, there's a massive ratio of failure to success. But corporations are really bad at creating areas in which you can do that.
Fully agree. And this is absolutely core, I think, because I always say in the company, guys, if there are no mistakes being made, it means that nothing is happening, that there is no activity at all. Because the only people that are paid to be risk adverse, probably you can find in the government, but not in a company. So if you do 10 new things, statistically, you do 6 of the 10 right and 4 will be wrong. So if 4 mistakes are made, it means that 6 things have been done in a new way. And then you need to encourage people, I think, always to break the rules. Say, look, there's the rule of law, and there's a rule that you have to be respectful of human beings and of nature. But for me, any other rule is there to be broken or to be bent or to be circumvented. And then you need to ask for forgiveness and never ask for permission. Because if you ask for permission, somebody might say, no, I don't think this is a good idea. And then you're stuck, because then you can't do what you just had passionately wanted to do. So go do it, and then explain to somebody else, you've just done it. I'm so sorry, next time, maybe, and you think this, maybe next time I'll ask for permission, but you don't.
And are you good at forgiving people who break your rules?
But of course you do, because this is how you
live. You really do? Like, it's one thing to say it, but like when someone breaks one of those rules you wrote down by hand,
that's how you live your life. This is how we live our lives.
You've got to do it with positive intent. I think that's the thing. If you're just breaking the rule which involves, embezzling large amount of money, I don't think I'd be as forgiving on that one.
Okay.
On her question, what is trust? To me, trust in business and to a certain extent in society is the expectation that another party will create value, and value is evidenced like never before because of transparency, but also that they will behave according to a certain set of values that we call integrity. They'll be honest, they'll be considerate of your interests, they'll abide by their commitments, and they'll be open. That's in part why we don't trust the financial services industry, because they violated that. But what's happening is there's now a systemic trust crisis across every one of those dozen of institutions that I talked about. And what's happening, just to sum that up, to me, I mean, this is a new paradigm that we're moving into. When you get one of these things cause confusion and dislocation and uncertainty, and they're nearly always received with coolness, or worse, mockery, hostility. You get vested interests that fight against change, and the leaders of the old are the last to embrace the new. And
you mean these guys?
Well, no, these guys are getting with the program, but I was just making a little list here for this group. Why didn't AT&T create Skype? That would have been a good one. How come NBC didn't create YouTube? Why didn't Universal create the new generation video game industry? Yellow Page could have created Craigslist. Why didn't CNN create Twitter? Sort of the micro thing, right? Why didn't Microsoft create Google? And you look around at what's happening, this digital divide.
Why didn't Google create Facebook?
Well, but
that's for all the Googlers here to answer that.
Why did it let Microsoft invest? But and you look at something like the digital divide. You know, the world's leading organization in bringing about broadband in the world, I would say, is Google, through its initiative around this, you know, gigabits per second thing in the United States, because they're saying, no, don't think about a 20% increment. Think about a couple of orders of magnitude, because that's what we really need. But again, it's not a leader of the old paradigm that's able to do that.
Okay, I'm going to just stop you for 1 minute because we have one. Let's get a few more questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
Is that okay? Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Frederick Court. I'm an investor with Advent Ventures. And a question for Robert, and would like to also have the feedback from the rest of the panel. You talk about Gucci being about selling the dream, but you're also controlling the dream very tightly. You know, it's very directional. So what about sharing the dream and enabling people to engage with the brand? I mean, is there a rule with your website managers that they can't open up the site and, you know, like on the Screwfix website, you get the plumbers commenting on which kind of widget they should be using. Should they be commenting on, you know, whether you should be wearing a blue jacket or not with your loafers, and then have a dialogue with other Gucci lovers? So is this something that we're going to see on the Gucci Group website?
Yeah, well, there you go. I was wondering whether you were saying loafers or lovers.
Sorry,
it could actually be both. Never mind. It is a particularly good question because it goes back into the essence of brand management. Because don't forget, we are a branded consumer goods company that happens to own 660 retail stores. So we do it in our own stores. But in managing brands, what is absolutely core and key is that you stick to the DNA of your brand in a very consistent way over time. So why is the Gucci brand 90 years young, as we say? Because it was invented 90 years ago, but it's still young, contemporary, and relevant for today's customers. Because they stuck to the core and they rejuvenated, revamped the brand over time, but consistent with the DNA. Now, the Gucci brand is about power, it is about sensuality, but it's also about heritage and craftsmanship. It's also about innovation and linking that innovation to its heritage. If you stick to that, to those principles, you can probably do anything you want. What is my biggest barrier to do exactly what you suggest we should be doing, which I agree with, is internal. Is internal. I say, what? Why, how do we manage this community of Facebook friends that we have, 660,000 for the Gucci brand? And I said, well, you interact with them. You ask them everything that they want to tell you. But they might say something which is bad about us. I said, well, that's exactly what you would like to know. Yeah, but it'll be public. I said, but you know what? You better have it saying it to you than being public and saying it to their friends anyway. So also there, I think there are no more any barriers, and it is a complete interaction. And by the way, this is a marketeer's dream that we're living now. Because what is marketing about? It's about the one-on-one relationship that we actually go back again. That started 90 years ago with Mr. Gucci having a customer in his store selling one-to-one. We can get back to that one-to-one relationship, a dream.
Why can't you get past those internal barriers, though? You run the place.
Fear of cannibalization, fear of change. This is in all of us. Each human being has those two fears. We're all born with that. And somehow you need to destroy the whole thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Would you like to comment, or should we have another question?
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Alexis Bond. I'm the CEO of eRepublic.com, and we're creating a new world that's based on direct democracy. all online. Do you think that the present society that we live in is really sustainable long term? I mean, Archibald Desmond Tutu say that we only have one planet and nobody can jump off. And you represent huge companies, obviously. Do you really think that the way we're doing things is sustainable?
I think we'll ask the lucky Carl-Henric to comment first.
Oh, what a wonderful question. It's a, I actually thought a lot about that question. I'm not the one to answer it, obviously, and I think everybody has an intelligent views on that. But it is interesting the way this world have become with companies. If you go 20, 30, because industry is a very, very fundamental driving change of society. If you go 20, 30 years ago, most companies, although they were international, they were exporters, they were all over the place, but they were basically nationally based. So you were a German company, or you were an English company, or an American or Swedish or whatever. Then came this whole globalization where the companies became so huge. So they really don't belong anywhere any longer. And that, I think, is a very important question for us as business leaders to think about. What's the company for? What are we here to do? And it's a very easy to say, well, let's build shareholder value and best possible return. Well, who are the shareholders? Well, largely hedge funds and others. They don't have much long-term expectations or anything or ambitions. So I think there is when you were a national company, it was impossible not to be part of the thinking of society, because you were chatting every now and then with the prime minister, and you would do things. You were part of something that took a responsibility. Today, the large corporations are sort of on another level where they don't have a natural connection. So it's a subsidiary that talks to the political leadership. And I think this is just one way of showing how countries and states and everything isn't necessarily in full sync. I think we have some tremendous challenges, and I don't think there's anyone, politicians or anyone, that can solve it alone.
If I could just ask a follow-up to that, because I think it's a really important point. You've all spoken about how you really see your future and your growth in the emerging markets, and you're worried about stagnation in Europe, maybe in North America as well. How does that fit with this fact that your companies aren't national anymore? You know, is there any danger that you might be extremely successful as global businesses, but start to find you face real opposition in the countries in which you were once based that aren't, you know, participating so much in that growth?
I think it's already happening. I think it's already there. I mean, a lot of the global companies are already sort of doing everything they can to establish themselves and leverage their positions in the emerging markets. And they don't take that active role maybe in their home markets where they once were. And you have, I don't think you have that tight relationships anymore. I think it happens.
And is it possible to be a company that's not a citizen of any particular country? Can you be a global citizen without being a national citizen as a company?
I mean, we don't see that. I mean, I think we fundamentally, it's helped by the fact that 80% of our customers come from within 20-minute drive time, so we're very local at the same time as being global. But I think you have to fundamentally play into a local community at local and national level, and I think it's still very much, we're a series of national companies. If I just do a 2-second answer on the question, I mean, the very short answer is no. At the moment, the current level of resource intensity is not sustainable by definition. So I think we have to find a solution to that and be fundamentally much, much less impactful. I think there's also a broader question, which is, you know, what's the next evolution? I think it is evolution of capitalism, because I think it isn't going to go on in exactly the same way. My only hope is that we get that in a sort of sensible evolution, enabled by, for example, the digital infrastructure, rather than a sort of government-led, knee-jerk sort of post-crisis regulation type evolution. So I think there are some really big challenges for major businesses that we're all going to be facing, and it's really important that business is part of that conversation and doesn't try and hide in the corner and avoid the issue.
Maybe one thing to add to this, because I'd agree with that, but the other thing I'm convinced of is that organizations as they exist actually are an assembly of people. And what do? We influence lives of people with the products and the brands that we sell, but most importantly, we provide an environment for people who work with, for which we have the privilege that they have joined us and are working for us, to provide an environment where they can exploit their own talents and they can be themselves and grow as human beings. And I think that is a very important part of why there is this organization, because many other things will be the consequence of that. So if you allow talents to grow, if you allow people to be themselves and exploit their own talents over time, you have an organization that is fantastically successful.
But in this digital world, don't you face the risk that your most talented people will just go set up their own thing? Why do they need you?
Well, they don't need me, but if I'm able to provide an environment where people feel, not because they're told, but because they feel that they are in an environment where they are being respected and where they can actually grow their talents and do things the way that they think the thing should be done, which means new things, because younger people have a completely different idea of what needs to be done than people of my age. You know what? It'll be fine. You'll have success. And
I think when it comes to younger people, a lot of them are going to be entrepreneurs out of necessity. You got 22%.
There's no jobs.
You have 22% youth unemployment in the United States. We have this little euphemism. It's called structural unemployment, which means it's not going to change. 40% in Spain. So, and young people, again, have at their fingertips this powerful tool for organizing and for creating companies that can have the same capability as big companies. On the question, I think Carl nailed it. I mean, if we're going to pull this off, and we don't know if we can, as the Archbishop said, every institution is going to have to change, as well as our own behavior. And a big one is the corporation. And we need to move away from this view of what is the purpose of a corporation? I mean, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. I interviewed a CEO of a bank 3 years ago, and he said, that's a dumb question. It's to create value for its shareholders. That is the purpose of a bank. Well, you know, banks have a broader role in society now. We need them to do other things. And there was this view in the past that you do well by doing good. That's the corporate social responsibility type. I don't think it was true. I think lots of companies did really well by being really bad, by being monopolies, having terrible labor practices, or by externalizing
selling structured
their
financial
costs
products
or whatever. But now, because of this new transparent environment, I think increasingly it will become true that corporations are going to have to have integrity as part of their bones. And they're going to have to be considerate of the interests of all of their stakeholders. And if there's anything this crisis tells us, it should be that business can't succeed in a world that's failing. And so I have hope because of that.
There are two people patiently waiting to ask questions. So if you could ask your questions very succinctly, and then we'll have a speed panel answer. Please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Matthew Dancona. I'm a journalist and writer. Mainly addressed at Don. Don, you talked in your remarks and also in Wikinomics about net generation and the idea that it was a generation who were neurologically changed by the revolution you describe. But at the same time, you describe a crisis of institutions. I'm particularly thinking of government, which is heading in completely the opposite direction. It's tending to centralize, it's tending towards greater message control. It talks about empowerment, but actually the process is heading in the opposite direction. Now, what are the means by which you can knit the two together? Because it seems to me that that's the institution of all the institutions you describe that is in many ways least meshed with the revolution we're all interested in.
Okay, and we'll have the final question and then we'll answer them together. Thanks, Matthew.
My name's Alan Brown, Rentokil. I worked with Rob some years ago, and I think it was clear even then, even more clear today, that Rob was not the type of guy who'd want to run an oil rig. And my question really to the panel is, how do you manage, as a leader, to have a culture in the business and a business system which allows you to be absolutely rigorous and say health and safety standards in one part of your business, yet leaves the free play space in other parts of the business to be creative?
Okay, these are two excellent questions. Rigor and creativity in business and empowered individuals, dysfunctional government. So we'll just run through the panel, answer as you wish, quite concisely. Otherwise, Dan will pull the plug on us.
Could I just pick up on Alan's, nice to see you again. The two things are, one is this thing Robert talked about, the rules of the game. You've got to have really clear boundaries and framework. And it is that freedom within the framework concept. People confuse empowerment with loss of control. It's all about autonomy within a defined space. And all the issues are about being very, very clear about where that space is and how that works. So it's not, I don't think it's, if you like, a contradiction. I think you just have to be super clear about where do these rules apply and where is the freedom
Break
within
rules,
them.
but don't embezzle, as you were saying.
That would be good, yeah.
Yeah, and of course I fully agree with that. But I'd like to add then one more thing, and that is that, and I've seen this when our children grew up. When they were 3 or 4 years old, we started treating them as full grown-up human beings. And you know what? Even at 3 or 4 years, they could handle that responsibility. So I've always said, why would I not trust somebody who has studied and who has got years of experience in the business to have enough common sense to behave like a grown-up and to take the decisions that he or she thinks are correct in the light of the rules of the game in the company and the vision and the ethics that and the values that we have agreed in the company. You know what? I think 99% of the people actually can be trusted with that responsibility. You do not have to control them because they take the right decisions themselves.
Carl-Henric, I think your answer is the toughest because it's one thing to have creative home designers and fashion designers, but do we really want our deep-sea drilling engineers to be that free and creative?
Well, I would just like to come back to the question as such. I think it's a very relevant question, and of course, in a company like BP and its competitors, same as airlines or nuclear power plants or whatever, in this kind of industry, there cannot be a single moment of compromise here. Safety is first, and you can see that in a company like BP. Every single meeting starts with a safety briefing. Everyone. And it's just no way that you have to have in the DNA, never ever compromise safety for cost or safety for profit. But it's also logical, because at the end of the day, a failure costs many, many more times than whatever you could save. So here it absolutely has to be part of DNA.
I think ironically, one of the ways to achieve control and security in this new environment is to open up. Because you can't control many things. And the way to control others is to be more open. I mean, look at how BP is trying to solve this huge crisis. It's to engage the world in finding solutions. And when it comes to a government, this is a big problem, because governments are illusory. To think that these old command and control bureaucracies that have this old model of creating public value are going to be sustainable. And you've got the intersection of the new web and this new generation that want to engage with governments very differently and have different expectations regarding what government should be. And if you want to learn as a government on how to fix that, I think a good place to start is actually with Obama. Because, first of all, he created a platform whereby myBarackObama.com, whereby 35,000 communities powered by young people brought him to power. And that's not just my point of view, it's his point of view. And now he's working hard with some success, some failures, in trying to keep citizens engaged in a very difficult environment. But it's a good segue to the next session, actually, because government as a platform and the use of data is going to be really critical in creating a more open and engaged government.
Okay, Don and I are clearly in psychic communion, because maybe it's our shared Alberta roots, because he has segged into the next panel beautifully, which is after lunch. It's going to be about the power of data. It's going to be moderated by John Palfrey, who's a professor at Harvard Law School. We all have to be very nice to him, because with Elena Kagan's appointment to the Supreme Court, the control of Harvard Law School over the machinery of US government is now absolute. Before we go to lunch, I hope you'll join me in thanking our magnificent panel. Don told us that old-style companies are on the road to death, and it's new digital individuals who are going to lead the way to the future. But I think we've had 3 incredibly innovative and open-thinking leaders of really legendary and esteemed firms. So thanks a lot, and especially Carl-Henric, very brave of you to come today. Really appreciate it.
I'll go home and close my well.
Yeah,